Hi, everybody. Welcome to our latest webinar. I'm Elaine Chang. I'm the Senior Manager for Global Market Development for TaroWorks. And we're super excited to try a new format for our webinar today. So in advance of our ICT4Ag conference that we're attending in Washington, D.C. on June 23rd, we wanted to preview some of the topics that we'll be exploring in that conference. And so specifically today we've assembled a panel of experts who work with ag systems and data, really targeted for smallholder operations. And we wanted to focus on the topic of what is the future of ICT for ag. So our panel is comprised of Lee Babcock. He's the Global Director for Agriculture at Grameen Foundation. We have John Corbett, who's the Chief Science Officer and co-founder for Aware, and Brent Chisholm, who is the CEO for TaroWorks.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Great.
Good morning.
Welcome, everyone. So our panel has a lot of ideas, so let's jump in. Oh, actually, before we jump in, some housekeeping rules. This session is being recorded, and we'll be making that recording and a summary available at the end of the session. We'll take questions at the end, but please send them in throughout the webinar, just so I get that on my list, and I'll kind of parse them out. If it's urgent, I'll kind of interject and ask it. Otherwise, I'll ask them at the end. So you can just use the chat or the question function on the GoToWebinar screen there. Great. I think with that, let's do a quick round of introductions. Lee, can you give a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure, Elaine, thank you. I'm Global Director for Agriculture at Grameen Foundation. I think I'm a little bit more than 3 months at this point in time. I've previously been an independent consultant. I had done a lot of publishing, writing, public speaking, strategic advising with folks like World Bank CGAP and Olam, which is a global agribusiness, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and others, all about the strategic potential and power and opportunities for inserting mobile money and other mobile solutions into the rural communities where people live at the base of the economic pyramid. I had previously been with an international NGO, previously Fortune 250, Silicon Valley, professional consulting, and had been in the field for like 15 years. So that's me in a nutshell.
Great. Thanks for joining, Lee. John.
Thanks, Elaine. My name is John Corbett. I'm an agricultural climatologist and have been working in this realm of sort of the development and trying to push information into the space where it's most needed. Really, in my whole career, I started a postdoc at the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center in Mexico, CIMMYT, and then moved back to Kenya, where I had done my PhD research in Kenya in the Eastern Drylands. And as a agricultural climatologist, what Aware is an ag intelligence company, and what we're finding more and more today with this the warming of the atmosphere has increased the weather variability, and this is impacting smallholder farmers in very strange but usually negative ways. If the rains come late or come too hard, disappear, things like this impacts agriculture, and it is an enormous opportunity for improved information to simply help optimize not only the whole of the ag value chain, but optimize the production and productivity of the smallholder farmers. I'm very pleased to be on this panel today. Thanks.
Welcome, John. And Brent.
Good morning, everyone. I am new to the webinar circuit here. I just started at TaroWorks earlier this year. Joined TaroWorks after spending several years in Tanzania in East Africa working in mobile payments with a startup called Kopo Kopo. And as part of that, I spent a lot of time trying to sign up merchants in Tanzania to accept mobile money payments. So while it was a different sector than agriculture, I have sort of on-the-ground experience of trying to set up a field agent network and collect information and process it. So I have seen a lot of the problems that TaroWorks is solving firsthand. I've worked at a number of other technology companies previously and also spent a couple of years living in Mexico. So, John, I guess we have that in common as well. Looking forward to the discussion this morning.
Great. Thanks, everybody. So the format is I have a few prepared questions that I will lob out there. We'll just get the conversation started. And I'd really welcome questions from the audience. So as a reminder, please send your questions in. And with that, let me start with my kind of pre-created questions. So the first one is really, some people are talking about mobile ag 2.0. And so I wanted to get your take on what is that, who's doing it, and why is it happening now? Lee, do you want to take the first stab at that?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Elaine, for the great question. It's an absolutely exciting topic. And a lot of what we're doing in 2.0 is as a result of lessons learned and best practices from ICT4Ag version 1.0, which we might acknowledge pretty much started about the same time that M-Pesa in Kenya was invented in 2017. So here we are, 2007. And so here we are in 2017. Now there had been some previous initiatives like e-Choupal in India and so forth. But let's just say that the stake was put in the ground in 2007. A key lesson learned is that it doesn't matter how brilliant the application is designed. The fact of the matter is, our farmers that live at the base of the economic pyramid, they can't afford to make an investment on day one and then not get a return on that investment until the end of month 9 when they harvest, for example. So, I think we need to move beyond into mobile ag 2.0 and away from the notion that farmers in any kind of a robust manner can provide for the sustainability of a platform by paying for it. They may be a part of the mix, but we need to climb higher up the value chain to others that might be more financial capacity and capability. And it kind of relates to the second thing in mobile ag 2.0, and that is bundled ICT4Ag functionalities. In ag 1.0, with great enthusiasm and passion and excitement, we had African entrepreneurs and Southeast Asian entrepreneurs and internationals that were designing an application that they thought would and hoped would be the magic bullet to solve all the wicked problems in agriculture. And, so what we're learning is, we need to bundle these applications. And in terms of channels for distribution and capture of information, the 4 channels that pretty much can capture anything and everything you would want to do in agriculture is, certainly marketing, like we've heard a lot about, connecting farmers to market, but also agricultural extension, supply chain management and surveillance, and we need to move into Ag 2.0 by way of strategic alliances that will design and deliver these kinds of digital solution sets that bundle these functionalities. And then maybe the third thing in terms of the what that you ask about, Elaine, is increasingly, and I'd say about 1.5 to 2 years ago, the development community, but really kind of leading the charge, the agribusiness community, the global, the regional, and local agribusinesses are really increasingly interested in, digitizing the cash payments they make to farmers for the sale of their cocoa beans or coffee beans or whatever to digital payments. And it should be noted there that that is a channel for the distribution and capture of money. So, 2 channels side by side, channels for information and channels for money. Going forward in 2.0, it's going to be those 2 channels working together. And that's the what. The who is, certainly Grameen is doing this. Grameen is very much, passionately committed to the notion of innovations that serve the people at the base of the economic pyramid, that serve poor people, not only in agriculture, but in digital financial services, and as well as health access and financing. And on the ag side, we are very much into this, mobile ag 2.0. Other great people out there are doing it, like Mercy Corps. They're doing something called AgriFin Accelerate in Kenya and 2 other countries. And that's a follow-on to a previous project Mercy Corps did called AgriFin Mobile in Uganda, Indonesia, and a 3rd country. The USAID Vodacom Connected Farmer Alliance, which is now over, but it did this same kind of stuff. It paved the way for mobile ag 2.0 in Kenya and Tanzania and a third country, I think Mozambique. And the USAID Mobile Money Accelerator Project, which is a very broad scope project, but within which they had 4 separate initiatives that was digitizing the cash payments to farmers and also using other mobile solutions like mobile agricultural extension and so forth. And then in terms of the why, very, very simply, when we bundle these kinds of functionalities, for money as well as alongside information, what we're doing is we are, first and foremost, maximizing the value proposition for the farmer. And we're doing that by directly connecting them to the supply chain, which at the same time, maximizes the value proposition for the anchor agribusiness, as well as for the mobile network operator, as well as for the technology solution provider, and whomever else may be also a member of the strategic alliance that within the agriculture space, literature and empirical evidence has shown increasingly are being formed. These cross-sectoral partnerships to solve wicked problems in agriculture, whether it be child labor, chronic poverty of farmers, climate change. The list is as long as your arm. So that's the who, that's the what, that's the who, and that is the why.
Great. John or Brent, any other thoughts there?
Yeah, I would just jump in with a little bit of my perspective from my previous industry, but I think another part of the question is why now? I think particularly in some of these countries, you're seeing, to Lee's point, things like M-Pesa really hit critical mass. Even as recently as 4 or 5 years ago, a lot of people had M-Pesa, a lot of people used M-Pesa for simple use cases, primarily things like sending money to family. The second order use cases were things like paying utility bills or perhaps buying airtime. And now you're beginning to see those systems, now that they're really widespread and people have become familiar with them, becoming available for other solutions as well, both as a payment mechanism, but solutions they can build on top of them. So at least in that area, which admittedly is just a small part of the world, I think there has been some technology change that has led to things happening now that weren't possible even 3-4 years ago.
I think my interest in this sort of 2.0 nomenclature on the information side, the why now is interesting. The weather variability is causing shocking impacts in agriculture. And big data is also the confluence of this ability to do analytics over large data sets that incorporate everything from access to market to soils to obviously the weather and the agronomic models that couple those, and the ability to connect symmetrical information, meaning tips and advisories that go directly to a smallholder farmer who has planted on a certain date a certain variety of a specific crop that allows that individual to optimize, to perform better. That information then in aggregate, hundreds of farmers in a trade area going to the input provider to help optimize what they deliver and the timeliness, and going later in the season perhaps to the markets, which are then able to, supply chain is literally able to optimize how they purchase it and how that gets to market. I see the confluence of the why now as the confluence of a lot of technologies, with the most important sort of facet in all of this is that you have to solve the improved productivity and profitability of the smallholder farmer for all the rest of the value chain to leverage the fantastic information, the fantastic monetary capabilities, the ability to push it to their to their accounts, and as well as take it from their accounts as payment for things they need to buy as input, the farmer. So it's the timing of these technologies is surging forward to help solve some of these very significant problems that are manifest right now in the landscape.
John, that's really interesting and kind of leads me to the next question here, which is the role of big data. So at a recent ICT4Ag conference in Hyderabad, a global group of partners launched the CGIAR platform for big data in ag. Gates Foundation has also included a focus on big data in their digital ag strategy. Obviously, it's a big buzzword in Silicon Valley. So what capabilities do you think will become possible in the future around big data, and what role do you see it playing for the smallholder?
So that's a that's a very broad question that actually has that very elegant endpoint. How does it value the smallholder? And I think that what the CG is trying to do is they have a grand vision around trying to package all of this research-oriented data to help go with those solutions that go to the smallholder. And I'm reading a little bit about, even from the perspective of nutrition, trying to ensure proper nutrition going out to the smallholder farmer, as well as agricultural productivity information, as well as the marketing information. At the same time, you know, Gates as a donor is suggesting that the only way to scale knowledge, obviously, is through these digital agriculture. I've seen terms like digital agronomy. I've seen terms of digital extension. The purposeful intent here is to arm the extension officer with far more information than one individual could ever possibly kind of be able to have, but have the tools at hand to ask pertinent questions in real time so as to solve for very real issues that would then range from productivity things that are actually happening on the farm in real time to potentially education and even health and nutrition, this seamless interaction. And where big data comes into play in all of this, in my mind, it's the way of scaling science. You know, if you've developed a new variety and you know its nuances for its behavior and responding to certain environmental traits that range from, you know, weather to soil to just the inputs that are affordable, what you have is the ability to still optimize. So if perhaps fertilizer is somewhat limited, but maybe this particular variety is going to respond better for X and Y, and then also the information systems, the modeling, are allowing farmers actually to do things that improve quality, which is now getting to this supply chain thing, which goes about characterizing the actual quality of the product coming off the land, because you clearly can get a higher price if you meet certain basic criteria. And the advantage of big data, in my mind, it's an overused term in some ways, but the real idea, the real vision is, if you think about it, is connect the greatest science, the best minds, the solutions, connect it and refine it down to where the bit of information that's going to that smallholder farmer is precisely what they need at the right time, so as to address really the challenges that people face on a day-to-day basis. And you can liken it in an odd way to the way in which many of us who drive cars through cities on a commute are able to look at real-time traffic data and adjust our route home. If you think of that simple analogy, it's only valuable in real time. Yesterday's doesn't even matter at all. You know, 2 hours from now it doesn't matter. And obviously agriculture doesn't necessarily have that same specific, you know, minute-by-minute timing. But if you take that analogy and extend it, it's the complexity of decisions that have to be made, you know, from management and inputs to marketing and sales, and that symmetrical information that the input providers in the markets need to see the same thing. And big data is perfectly capable of doing this. And this is where the exciting part about Mobile Ag 2.0 is the information that might go specifically to a farmer might show up on a more of a map view to the Ministry of Agriculture or to the input provider, so that they can actually gauge the total volume of what's needed where. And I think it comes down to that targeting, what is needed where.
Great.
Yeah, I think I would jump on there, John. That in addition to the data going out, I think the other key component, which is important, is understanding what behavior did that trigger and what was the result of how that data was used. And you know, obviously the development sector has been experimenting a lot with this, and the whole initiative to try and bring in randomized control trials as a methodology for testing what works has been kind of a really interesting development of borrowing from medicine to try and get at a more scientific understanding of what have an impact. I think that's going to be really important to the future of big data, is understanding what pieces of information can have an impact, but then also how they're communicated and how do you make them comprehensible to the end user, smallholder farmer, so that they know what to do with that. And can you do that purely via a SMS type interaction, or does it take some kind of in-person interaction through an agent network or through a service provider out in the field to make that comprehensible to the person at the end of the line so they can know what to do?
And to follow on with that point, Brent, and it's absolutely germane to what Ag 2.0 is all about. And what John is talking about is the brilliant opportunity to deliver subject matter content that Aware can capture and to help inform, decision making by the field agents, inform decision making by the farmers themselves, inform decision making by financial institutions that are engaged in the value. That's absolutely critical and important. The other piece of the puzzle is we need to acknowledge, respect, and appreciate the fact that a key shortfall in the implementation of ICT4Ag to date is the lack of awareness raising and education about the features and benefits of these various mobile solutions and mobile money and so forth amongst the farmers, which is what everybody thinks about, of course, right? But also amongst the management, the staff, and the field agents of the agribusinesses that the digital solution is attempting to intervene into, that supply chain. So, I just want to put out there for everybody to acknowledge that education about features and benefits of the mobile solution is absolutely vital going forward in 2.0. You find this in the literature, you find this in the empirical evidence. It was cited as shortfalls on the Kenya Nut pilot, on the Connected Farmer Alliance, the Tanga Fresh pilot, the mobile money accelerator thing in Malawi that I mentioned. We as a development community are learning our lessons and learning our lessons fast. And so we need to be sure that we don't duplicate certain shortfalls as we go forward in the mobile ag 2.0.
Lee, that's actually I think that is the nut that has to be cracked still. The technology is not the limitation. In fact, almost comically, you could say it's way overextended relative to the recipient's capability of even exploiting it. And here in the U.S., you see that, of course, with people who simply don't want to use, they don't even want to learn more about the technology that's at their fingertips in these amazing smartphones. But the piece that's happening and what you're driving at on the education piece, I'm absolutely convinced this is where, I'm going to call it marketing because that's sort of the commercial enterprise wording for education. It is hard to educate a market, but I think I think you're right. I think it is one of the most important things that is going to be an ongoing challenge, is just literally making it known that these opportunities to improve, to learn more is available and that someone can do something about it. That energy, I think there's a tipping point that'll happen where it becomes almost second nature. People will learn things rather rapidly, but right now it's still a bit of an uphill climb.
And while it may present as a challenge in the minds of many people, and no doubt it's going to be a challenge, none of this stuff is easy. But we need to recognize something that is very characteristic of the agricultural sector. And that is, in whatever country you go in and in whatever value chain that you may be engaged in, generally speaking, there's always some kind of an existing infrastructure for the transfer of traditional agricultural knowledge about good agricultural practices, whether it be how to do better production quantity, better production quality, how to kill this bug, how to kill this disease, better post-harvest handling. And the thing is, it's season after season after season. It's always ongoing, because that's the knowledge. That traditional knowledge needs to be continually upgraded and shared with the farmers. And what we as a community need to embrace is simply subject matter content about these types of mobile solutions need to simply be added to that menu of subject matter content that is delivered by these agricultural extension frameworks. And that's how we can piggyback on something that's already out there and help to mitigate the significant challenges for how to promote this kind of awareness and education.
I'm going to kind of switch to take that and segue to the next question, which is, so there are obviously kind of tools out there, and it seems like there's a need for kind of marketing what other apps do, or other solutions do. What is the eventual channel, I guess, like, what's the channel for how this is going to happen? What form is an Ag 2.0 going to take? Let me just switch to this slide here. Yeah, that's the next prompt. Brent, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I'll I'll bring in a couple of lessons from a couple of other industries, which are fundamentally technology lessons and applied to agriculture just as anything else. So I'll tell two stories. So the first story comes when I was working at a web hosting company called Digex back in the dot-com boom era. And Digex was acquired by WorldCom, a company that later became MCI, and that later became part of Verizon. So it doesn't even exist as a separate entity anymore. But we got acquired by WorldCom. We were the last of several big acquisitions. And their IT team came in to say, okay, we're going to do an audit of your systems and see what's supportable because we, WorldCom, are on a strategic process, a 7-year mission to go across all these acquisitions and reduce the number of core enterprise software platforms we're using from 37 to 22. I just remember thinking, wow, 7 years and the best you're going to do is, go down to 22. It wasn't down to 1. It was just, down to some smaller set of number, and that was going to take them 7 years to do that. On the flip side, another story more recently from talking with someone in a financial institution in East Africa who's begun talking to us because they were trying to use their core banking system for both the process of underwriting loans and evaluating, signing up new accounts, but then also collecting customer relationship management information like photographs and GPS coordinates and other things, all in the one app. And the load of the additional data of all the CRM stuff that they were creating was killing the core banking app, because the core banking app wasn't fundamentally built to handle all that kind of data. It was built to try and evaluate risk and figure out what type of loans you could extend. So that was, they were trying to have one system to rule them all, and that was also having problems. So I think this tension of like having too many systems, one system to do every function versus having one system that does everything is a consistent one across technology, and it's going to be the issue here. In particular, I've just spent some time in Nairobi, and there's a lot of fascinating things going on in Nairobi. You have kind of the full range of approaches there. So you have at one end what I would call, or what is often called in Silicon Valley, the full stack approach, a company called iProcure. So iProcure is trying to set up a system that will allow farmers to find buyers for their produce. And the idea is by aggregating a bunch of different buyers and a bunch of different sellers, you can allow sellers with bigger orders to fill them. The problem they're tackling, in addition to that, however, because there's several others approaching that, is that the supply chain can fall down both at the starting point and at the end point. So iProcure is taking ownership of both the beginning part of the value chain and the end part of the value chain, so that, because their point is that if your contract is not fulfilled, you're not going to trust the platform, and it doesn't matter that it wasn't fulfilled because the truck broke down. It was not fulfilled, so you're not going to trust it. So they're going full stack. They're trying to do the whole value chain and do everything through that. That's an interesting and really ambitious approach. You have some other solutions that I would call sort of very vertically deep, rich solutions, like Isoko would fall into this, where they're not maybe trying to do the full stack, they're not trying to do everything you can do, but they're trying to have a very deep type of application that lets you handle things like buying and selling, matching, and then bring that information in to provide financial services to enable farmers to get loans to finance their businesses. So that's sort of kind of a very vertically deep along the value chain. And then you get a lot of ad hoc approaches. So a number of SMS-based approaches that will enable you to do surveys, or perhaps just mobile data collection, where the mobile data is getting dumped into an Excel spreadsheet, and some analyst is getting all these different spreadsheets that come in and trying to make them all fit together, maybe in one master spreadsheet, and trying to deal with the data challenges of that. And into that, you also have other players like some of the pay-as-you-go solar companies who are taking their payment platforms and saying, well, can we extend, can we go talk to a farmer who's maybe using one of our solar lanterns and begin providing them financial services through this platform as well. So kind of all of these things are, you've got some very vertically oriented, you have some sort of piecemeal. In all these cases, you have a challenge of getting all the data to work together. And you can't get the data to work together unless you organize it around some kind of core identity. And at TaroWorks, we believe that core identity should be the farmer. And that the only true view you're going to be able to get to tie all these things together is if you have a single source of who are the identities you're interacting with, and then tracking their interactions, whether those interactions are happening through mobile money or an SMS system or somewhere else. Now, fortunately, there's been a lot of development around these types of customer relationship management, CRM systems. I would, rebrand it in this case to be farmer relationship management. Salesforce is, probably one of the best known. In many ways, they were the innovator in changing the way that software is delivered and used by going from installs into a data center on-premise to being available over the cloud. They've also done a lot to make that platform open for via APIs for different data to come in. So I think in whatever form it takes, whether it's vertically oriented systems or whether they're more ad hoc approaches, in any type of mobile ag system, you're going to need a core identity repository, and we're past the point where Google spreadsheets and paper records are going to be enough for that. You need something really more robust. And just to kind of tie them together, because to the previous point about all the different approaches out there, if you want to understand if things are working, you can't do that unless you have a consistent way of seeing, this input went in and what kind of behavior came out. Lee, maybe you have a better perspective than I do on the particulars of ag that relate to this.
A lot of it is very germane, and I think it's worthy to submit for our review and consideration that, an extension of this identity focus, Brent, that you left with, as regards the digital payments that I mentioned earlier, that increasingly, development and agribusiness sectors are looking at. If you digitize the cash crop payment streams that buyers make to farmers, what you're doing is, for the first time ever, you're creating for the farmer a form of financial identity. And that's an extension of the identity focus that you're talking about on the TaroWorks Salesforce platform. And so, herein you're connecting the channel for distribution capture of money that I was describing earlier with the channel for the distribution capture of information, which is the TaroWorks and Salesforce. So the two of those going forward. So if TaroWorks and does have the farmer as the identity focus, and combined with the financial identity of the mobile wallet, then that makes for a powerful 1-2 punch to empower this farmer and the smallholder farming household to be a part of formal economic activity.
I think what you're saying there is innovative and very powerful. And keep in mind the opening comment that who is going to pay for some of these services will be more of those higher up the value chain. So as you build out that identity, if you build out the translation of that information to its aggregate, so that think of it from I think there's an example, I want to call it, it's the COPA, the solar lantern company in Kenya. I heard an anecdote there that I thought was quite striking. I think it came from the list of farmers who receive information from iShamba. So here you have two very disparate pieces of, someone focused on agriculture, someone just, the lantern idea, solar powered with the M-Pesa, the payment, the monthly payment. What they began to see was they could, talking to each other, actually brought in a third party. It was a solar powered irrigation pump company, because that data allows you to optimize the marketing of another part higher up the ag value chain, and the ownership of that relationship is actually extremely valuable if you can aggregate it and hand stacks of likely customers already sifted, if you will, to other parts of the value chain, which has a lot of value. And if you think about it from any company's perspective. If you've got a purely agricultural model here, you have a trade area, right? You have a 100-kilometer radius around a village, and you've got a stockist selling things. If the rains are pretty good on the north side, and someone owns the relationship with those farmers are going to need a top-dress fertilizer or have an elegant ROI. The data models would describe how good the yield response will be if they purchase and put more fertilizer down. Whereas on the south side, no. Well, that knowledge of who to go talk to is actually quite relevant and would be valuable and paid for, which would then, I'm going to use the word subsidize, but that's not quite the correct way to think about it, but that would cover the cost of the data transfer for all kinds of things to that same smallholder farmer. And obviously other aspects, not even in the agriculture value chain, but in just the human value chain, this idea of like M-COPA, solar light. If they know that farmers have done well one year, they have been profitable, they got good rains, things worked out well, that they may have cash to up their just their quality of life by purchasing different items. These things can be valuable across other value chains, but it's all about the identity and information. And obviously you have to treat this with phenomenal respect and privacy, but the idea here would be is to find out ways to improve agriculture by having other parts of the value chain pay for it.
And thank you for that, John, and your mention of M-COPA and pay-as-you-go solar, and it's very much part of the thinking for why we have a partnership with PEG Ghana, which is a pay-as-you-go solar provider, because as our farmers are paid onto their mobile wallet for the sale of their crop, then they can use that smallholder farming household income to make the micropayments to PEG Ghana for the solar home system, the affordable solar home system that they've purchased, and which is helping to improve the lives for that family and the children in that household. So the point is, because of these mobile technologies, there are all these additional business distribution models that are arising, like M-Solar, and I think pay-as-you-go solar, and I think, John, you mentioned M-irrigation, which is something I'd like to learn more about. But this stuff is cropping up, like I say, like wild mushrooms after a rain. All these various, and that kind of goes to, something I wanted to comment on earlier. Because of this technology, it's not about, the challenge of designing another app. It's about the challenge of designing business model innovations that capitalize on this technology. So when we talk about Mobile Ag 2.0, Mobile Ag 2.0 is going to include not only ag, because that provides the income into the household, but it's going to include other sectors like pay-as-you-go solar, pay-as-you-go irrigation, for health, payment of education fees, and so forth. You see, the technology allows us to think beyond just silo approaches to solving problems. And so we need to expand our limitation of our human mind to only think about things one at a time, to embrace the potential of the technology to think about how to solve problems in the aggregate at the village level, but starting with agriculture because it's the most viable sector in these communities.
Great. Lee, I'm going to take the opportunity to segue and riff on what you just said. We had a great question from Teresa Walter. Can you speak about the real-time application of TaroWorks in the field and any potential issues? I think in general, are there any, like to your point, Lee, are there any examples where you've put together these existing technologies into one system, and can you share that example?
Was it a question directed to TaroWorks and Brent, or?
Well, I can.
Brent can take it. Yep.
Yeah, I can chat, and I think Lee, you can jump in. So the solution I think that's kind of most advanced that's up and running now is a Grameen-based solution in the Philippines called FarmerLink. At FarmerLink, they have two kind of main interventions they're doing. One, they have it's a coconut planter program. They have agriculture extension workers going out into the field and surveying and working with the farmers using TaroWorks and Salesforce, and they've built up a database of, I think, something on the order of 20 or 30,000 farmers that they're working with through this. And then, in addition to that, there's a weather alerting system that Aware is powering to provide alerts to the farmers on an automated basis, and I think John can speak better to that, so I'll let him jump in on it. And that's a situation where you've got identities being stored and interactions with them measured both via a mobile app and people in the field, and also via SMS interactions that are being triggered by some big data sets and algorithms. Maybe John and Lee can chat more about your parts of it.
I'm happy to kind of jump in a little bit. I think one of the keys to sort of aware success and emerging sort of playing in this big data field is the whole idea of, the other attribute of these other sectors of the economy, so to speak. And a simple one is just knowing where someone is. And so the more specific geolocation you have for the field in question, the more likely you're going to have very accurate and tailored advice going via, say, an SMS or a more sophisticated app if the person has a smartphone. I think that the big data piece, as I said before, I don't think this is a technical challenge. It's really more, Lee, what you were saying. It's the vision of being able to recognize how quality of life and education, health, obviously income in this case. A lot of these obviously smaller farmers are primarily earning income through agriculture. So yeah, you have to optimize that. But if you pay attention to these other pieces, it makes the education challenge, perhaps on just the agricultural thread, to be that much more palatable, because people are receiving information in other parts of quality of life kinds of advisories. And I think this is really where call it a jump shift in the entire manner with which information is coming into people who formerly had quite a bit of there were walls and barriers to access to information, trying to tailor it to make it more realistic. The whole education process, takes forever. But yeah, please join in.
So aware was very much a part of, is a key component of the ecosystem of our partners for the strategic alliance of FarmerLink in Philippines. Our main foundation is running. And TaroWorks was a platform that was key to the delivery of the subject matter content. So that's Aware for content, TaroWorks for delivery channel, and then Remain Foundation brought to the table, the business model innovation of pulling together these various strategic alliance partners. And it's a very, very large roster of partners. We've partnered with a couple global, it's specific to coconut, by the way, in the Philippines, some global coconut buyers, as well as some financial institutions that are part of the mix, as well as the Philippine, Agricultural Extension Agency, as well as some additional applications that deliver their messaging across TaroWorks or other platforms like Engage, Spark. There's an early warning system. So, what you have here is the combination of subject matter content, the Aware type of and other content, platforms like TaroWorks, and business model innovations. And this goes back to the top of our discussion when I mentioned in the literature and empirical evidence, it's becoming clear that these types of global agribusinesses, like these two players that we're partnered with on FarmerLink Philippines, are increasingly coming to realize there needs to be the formation of these kinds of cross-sectoral partnerships, or what we at Grameen call strategic alliances, in order to solve these kinds of wicked problems in agriculture.
Great, thanks. Teresa, I hope that answers your question there. I wanted to also bring up another question from Laura Frederick, and this has sort of something to do with John's comment that a lot of these farmers have devices already. So her comment was around the why now question. Her observation is that because of touch phones, smartphones, affordability, it allows for very robust media like videos and photos that can facilitate real-time access to information that's customized to the smallholder farmer, that's making kind of more channels available to them. Any comments on that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's actually one of the evolutionary things that you could have anticipated a few years ago. You went from feature phones, which were very complex to try to send complex information to the smartphone, where now it's really just a data feed that you can actually push to the user's phone as well. I think I'm is it digital? I think it's Digital Green that specializes in these videos that are quite illuminating. They're in local languages, but also the visual part of learning. I know that I'm very much a visual learner to the point where it's embarrassing to say I can forget people's names who tell it to me, but if they're wearing a name tag, I'll never forget it. And that's kind of funny. But the point is, I think the more we take advantage of I guess it's the human side of understanding how people learn, and this becomes, I think, some of the real challenges in the adoption of what the technology can do. Is that frontline worker, are you able to achieve the behavior change, I suppose? I think here's a very interesting challenge that came out of a survey on the use of just sort of the agricultural content piece. And actually it was a comment by a Grameen individual that I met at a conference a couple weeks ago in Boulder, Colorado. And what he said was, if you have a trusted channel, information channel, a conduit to the smaller farmer, she's receiving information that she learns to trust. You can actually send information on completely other topics. And one of the questions in the agricultural space, and this relates very much to the increased weather variability and some of the real challenges of just the environment, is one of the questions in this third-party survey was, did she try something new? And 63% of the farmers said yes, meaning they did things that they had not done before. And I don't have details on whether that was a relatively small thing or whether it was a big thing, like literally changing crop or variety. But the point of fact is I think as we build out these trusted channels of information services, I think you will see a very rapid increase in the range of things that will be pulled. The users will start to demand far more than just just the ag information or just the monetary, the financial. They will be looking for career advice for their children. I mean, they will be looking for reviews of this or that, and that's, I think, is one of the real huge opportunities that we're literally on the cusp of now. Smartphones really are a generational jump shift from a feature phone, and I think we all agree to that. Literally, one degree of separation.
So I'll actually differ with John a little bit. I think that I agree with him that smartphones have those capabilities, but I think that the ability for folks to use them in countries can be quite variable, quite limited, and the extent to which they'll actually use their smartphones for other things, I think really comes down to two things. Like, do they see value in a particular app or interaction on the smartphone? Do they see value? And if they see value, then they'll be willing to download it and to use it. So concretely, in Tanzania, everybody had WhatsApp and Facebook on their smartphones. And they used WhatsApp and Facebook, even though Facebook could be much more complicated than some of the more simple single-purpose apps that you saw out there to do kind of different other things. And in part, not only would they use Facebook, they would pay for data to be able to access Facebook. And that's because they saw value in it. So I think that it gets back to that sort of human challenge and sort of what John was also saying is for people to use their smartphones for types of things like this, they have to see value, and that value has to come from direct experience of a benefit from it. And I think oftentimes that link is broken, and so it results in apps not being downloaded or not being used. So I think the potential is certainly there, but that kind of education and training topic that we've talked about before is really crucial to making sure that the things are actually used and not just never downloaded or downloaded and not used.
Great. We have another question from Laura Frederick, and that's in response to the what question. So in addition to, you guys have talked about channels for information, channels for payment as featuring very prominently in Mobile Ag 2.0, but is there a place for access to transportation, labor markets, so i.e. Uber tractor or trucking, and being able to access short-term labor needs? Have you guys seen any applications for that?
Well, there's applications, yes, most definitely. There's Hello Tractor in Nigeria. I think there's also a similar tractor app in Ghana. And again, all these applications are sprouting up like wild mushrooms after a rain, which is absolutely exciting. But those kind of applications fall within, from a 30,000-foot altitude, those four main functionalities that I was describing: the surveillance, the marketing, the agricultural extension, and in this case, for Hello Tractor and such, a supply chain management, the transport from the farm gate to the buyer. So, thank you very much for the question, and it is part of the overarching, framework of what you'll find happening with Mobile Ag 2.0. And so as there is some kind of a strategic alliance, let's say Nigeria, that's put down for which, tractors are important, then Hello Tractor application in Nigeria will be a part of that overall digital solution set that is designed by that strategic alliance that is created.
Great. Thanks for all of your questions throughout. Hopefully I got to all of them. Actually, if there are any others, type them in and we'll try to get back to you on that. In the interest of the time, or looking at the time, I'm just going to ask my last question, and that is kind of how, there's been a lot of ideas here. How do we turn this back to the farmer? How is all of this going to help that end farmer? And then maybe what needs to change in order to enable that to happen?
I think for me, it's Lee's point about the innovating on the business models, because as sort of Lee, I think, and others have pointed out, the smallholder farmer doesn't have a lot of money to be able to pay for additional services. It's one, and two, so they're very, very conservative on what they purchase. And however, there are value chains that are making money in legitimate ways from reaching them from the agricultural inputs companies and others. So we have to show value in these new types of systems, how it can create value for either the optimization of the supply chains or the improvement of the production of the farmers, so that that the different players will be willing to invest in the technology, at a level, because a lot of these investments will require an upfront payment or upfront cost that is only paid for over time, and the link of that time, due to the nature of the agriculture growing cycle, may be that the return is disconnected from the immediate expense, leading to people being even more reluctant to invest.
I certainly agree with that perspective. I would add that the show value piece is absolutely correct, and I would also augment it or somehow say it another way, which is a lot of this technology, its adoption is dependent on whether it solves a problem. And I think sometimes the simple apps that, like an Uber tractor, this is the kind of concept that it solves a real problem, and it can stay a very small app. I think you run into this sometimes in entrepreneurial presentations where the entrepreneur tries to present what they're doing as like the center of some big wheel and hub kind of concept, And I like to think more of it as an a la carte thing, where the user really is going to selectively run the apps that make the most sense to solve their problems. And of course, there is a wide range of problems, and it's unlikely that a single sort of comprehensive tool. And that's where I really do like the strategic partnership, where you have multiple tools out there, and they're utilized at the appropriate time, and it can be. And I think the integration and the innovation in the business model should be the real messaging, perhaps around this 2.0 concept. Is the more you innovate, the more likely the impact just grows in leaps and bounds, and that, of course, then scales food security. I mean, it has huge impacts across the whole ecosystem of these smallholder farmers, their households, and the villages and their communities.
Hey, John, I have a quick little story that adds on to that from my time in Tanzania. So there was a story in the newspaper I read about a farm in the southern part of Tanzania who had gotten tractors donated by some NGO had donated tractors. The NGO went back to check it out, and the tractors were being used as taxis to drive between that town and the next small town. Because from the perspective of the people there, they didn't need they didn't need better ways to most important to them was not better ways to till the fields. It was transport between the two cities. So I think that's the challenge, is like make sure that the things that you're building aren't, you're not building something when really what was attractive, when what was really needed was a taxi.
I love that story, because that's the nature of human innovation, is people are going to solve a problem one way or the other. I mean, yeah, that's great.
The other, the other one along those lines, Lee, sorry to cut you off, was malaria mosquito bed nets being used as fishing nets.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm hungry. Absolutely.
I think something else that I think can inform our thinking as a community about, Mobile Ag 2.0. I guess I think maybe 2 points I've jotted down on the back of this piece of paper is, we need to acknowledge as a community that, perhaps for the first time ever in time, we have an infrastructure that extends all the way into the household, the smallholder farming household at the base of the economic pyramid. And importantly, and perhaps even most importantly, it is a self-financed infrastructure. And what I mean to say by that is, these farmers didn't get these phones from, World Bank or USAID, given away. I mean, these farmers, they didn't need for a day or 2 or 3 days just so they can save up enough money to buy a basic Nokia handset, because that's how important voice connectivity was to them within the village, between villages, and to the big city or the capital city where their children go. And so, we as development professionals and others, it's incumbent on us, because we all know that there's multiple functionalities on even a basic Nokia handset, for mobile money, for GPS location, and, the list of other functionalities that can be capitalized on. And so, we need to work to develop these business model innovations to, as John says, solve a problem, as John says, within the framework of strategic partnerships, so that we can help our farmers at the base. And I think the second thing is kind of related to the first is, because of digital innovations, because of digital technologies, and I don't mean just, the voice connectivity, I mean, the voice connectivity and the channels for distribution and capture of information. Again, for the first time ever, our farmers, we can help our farmers aggregate their voice. If that voice is in the form of, farm management plans or aware subject matter content that's delivered to financial institutions or whatever, the point is we need to acknowledge that what's happening here is, for the first time ever, because of digital technologies, our farmers now have a voice. So those are, I think that, like, 2 things we might care to acknowledge as a community going forward in Mobile Ag 2.0. That's what we're trying to achieve.
That's great. Thanks for kind of ending on that vision, Lee. I think that's really inspirational, and look forward to being part of that. So with that, I think we're at time, a little bit past. So thanks for everybody who joined. Lee, John, and Brent, thanks so much for your insights. This is really great. Thanks, everybody, and we'll catch you at the next webinar.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.